Hello, just recently, about a week ago, was November 7th, 2022. It's kind of a special day depending who you ask. It is N7 Mass Effect Day, but more importantly for our purposes here, it's also the 16th anniversary of Gears of War as a series. Back in 2006, November 7th, Gears of War 1, the original, launched on the 360. And in celebration of Gears of War's 16th anniversary, we were greeted by a kind of strange, out-of-left-field announcement from Xbox, the Coalition, and or Netflix saying that they were going to be making a live-action movie and an animated TV series with Gears of War as they had kind of done for The Witcher in the past. This has made me very skeptical in the last week or so as I've thought about it more and more. Not just because video game movies have such a reputation for being just horrible, but it's Gears of War, which to me is very special. I imagine this is the same dread that a lot of Halo fans had when they announced the Paramount series was coming, or the same thing as a lot of Witcher fans felt when it was coming, when The Witcher was coming to Netflix as well. I was worried that the Witcher series on Netflix was going to be bad, and it was alright in the first season. The anime movie wasn't very bad, and then, after the first episode of season 2, it just went down and down and down so far now that Henry Cavill has left, but that's another story. Right now, I'm thinking that the live-action movie will be passable at best. With a solid cast and an okay script, maybe someone like Dave Bautista or Lester Spite could carry the movie and make it kind of passable, something at least better than what we've seen with the Resident Evil series and The Witcher. I think what intrigues me the most is if they do an animated series, because for some reason the animated series stuff on Netflix tends to see a lot more breathing space. The Netflix show just sort of did whatever it wanted to. Arcane was this big creative explosion of just a great show. The Castlevania, you hear a lot, is pretty good. But I think with an animated show and the way technology has kind of progressed recently, there's a good possibility, or just even the door open, that they could make it in Unreal Engine 5. If you don't know, Unreal Engine has already been used in some film projects like The Mandalorian. Obviously, Unreal Engine is the engine that Gears of War has been built on for 16 years now. And I think as we've seen with Gears 5, Gears of War 5, whatever, on Unreal Engine 4, on the Xbox One, still looked pretty incredible. So an all-rendered, all cinematic Unreal Engine 5 project that's just basically along the video game, movie, cinematic type thing, just all cutscenes, I guess. I feel that has a lot more potential to be something that's just interesting, because it means they can make a video game show, whatever, that is basically just the video game as we know it, but a little bit prettier, and they're able to get all the original voice cast and everything, obviously, because they don't need to repurpose anyone. They can get people like John DiMaggio and I forget his name, Fred Tatasciore. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I might have just fucking butchered it, but I've never heard it said. But he's the guy who does Baird. He's pretty big in voice acting too, but he doesn't, obviously he can't carry a live action role as well as someone like Batista or Lester Spite, who if you don't know, Lester is the voice and basically body for the Cole Train, because he also was Terry Tate, the Office linebacker way back in the day.
Hey, buddy.
Whoa! You know you can't bring that weak ass stuff up in this Humpty Bumpy. You killed it, Joe. You make some more. You know that, baby. Else you're in for a long day. A long day. Cause Triple T's up in this bed.
And honestly, if they don't do it through Unreal Engine to make it look like the games in an animated series, I think the best thing they could do is go for that kind of modern G.I. Joe Force type look. If you've seen Love, Death, and Robots, which is also on Netflix, there's an episode in season 3 of that called Kill Team Kill, which is all about these soldiers fighting a robot bear or whatever. The main thing is the art style that I'm basically pulling from now, where you see these dudes, and if you just cover over the Vietnam G.I. Joe look with Gears of War armor, I feel that would work perfectly. I feel at the end of the day, whatever anyone says, whatever I say, whatever other people say, whatever Cliff Belensky says, all that's going to matter is whatever Netflix decides to do with it, and that all we can hope for is that they stay faithful and truthful to the actual like sources, to the games, to the books and the comics and stuff that hardcore fans care about. You could have a situation like The Witcher. As far as I can tell, the people writing The Witcher show have just gone off in their own direction. There's been a lot of like talk and stuff about how they just totally badmouth the books and the games and whatever. And that can appeal to some people. I've talked to a fair amount of people that don't know anything about The Witcher, but they like the show because they're not being, if you play the games or you read the books and then you watch the show, you're having a much different experience than someone who's never seen The Witcher in their life. And I think you could definitely end up in that same sort of boat with Gears of War. Gears of War is not as big of a game as a lot of people like to think it is. It's nowhere near like Halo or Call of Duty or even like The Witcher as like that's the main thing on my mind right now, because obviously The Witcher on Netflix is such a big series for them and for kind of like video game adaptation movies series in general. I just think Gears of War is not that big of a series, and most people who watch the Gears of War series on Netflix, including people that are probably going to be working on the show, aren't totally going to be aware of all the things that have come before. They might know the big things. Like when I hear people outside of like communities in Gears of War talk about Gears of War, the main things they get to is Dom kills himself, Marcus screams a lot, Coltrane woo woo, and the chainsaw on the Lancer, I guess. Those are like the biggest things the game has, and I feel like a lot of people don't really notice that. I saw someone earlier today on the Gears of War forums, which I am active on. I'm, not ashamed to say that. It's basically just Reddit, but exclusively Gears of War, which I'm all for. But I saw someone on there today saying that they should cast so-and-so as Alicia Valera, who, if you don't know, is one of the, I wouldn't say side character, but she's one of the 4 characters in Rom Shadow, which is the DLC expansion for Gears of War 3. And to me, it was kind of wild that like people were already throwing those names out. Of course, as like fans, you would understand and you would want these characters to be represented. But if you're somebody who has no idea what Gears is under the surface, or you just know it, or even if you've just played the main games and you haven't touched any of the DLCs or anything, they're going to have no idea who that is. And that does open it up for kind of creative possibilities if they're making a new story based on Gears of War, or if they're adapting it. It means they can add in new things that people may not be familiar with. But at the same time, I feel like people and fans of the games and the series are going to get caught up on the fact that they know so much and the series isn't using that. But it's just, whatever. I don't expect a whole lot from a movie or a TV show. I'm not looking forward to it. That's kind of like the wrong way to put it. I'm just not optimistic. Obviously, after seeing things like the Paramount Halo show, The Witcher on Netflix, and what was it? Was it a show or a movie of Resident Evil that came out recently? I didn't watch it, but I've seen clips of it, and it definitely does not look good. But I think that end of the day, the most I can be for like a Gears of War adaptation in a movie or whatever is just, okay. I imagine they're going to get Dave Bautista in a do-rag and just sort of call it a day, But if you were to bring up casting, I've heard so many random and kind of wild picks for people's like fan casts of the Gears of War characters, mainly just, Delta Squad. The biggest one I've seen, and the one that most people tend to agree with, is Dave Bautista as Marcus. Obviously, he's not really my favorite pick as Marcus. I can't really think of anyone else who would do it. To me, most of Marcus is the voice, so without John DiMaggio as Marcus's voice, I think it kind of falls apart. But Bautista being such a big fan, and obviously he appeared as Marcus in Gears of War 5, and him being kind of... A lot of people in the Gears of War community kind of respect him for like his love of the series and everything, so I could definitely see him just being cast as Marcus flat out like that. I actually think it might be a bad move to not cast Dave Bautista as Marcus in the live-action movie they do. And then I think the next most obvious choice is Lester Speight as Cole. As I mentioned, he played Terry Tate, and he is the actual voice of the Cole Train. So he embodies Cole in both physicality and obviously voice performance. He's been Cole for 16 years now, and from everything I've seen of him online, he's still very much built for the character. But I've seen a lot of people throw just like the name Terry Crews out instead, which kind of like strikes me as odd. I get that like Terry Crews is basically just a more famous version of Lester Speight. That kind of feels weird to say, but they are kind of just like the same dude, you know. They're both big, massive guys with just like this super up to 11 like atmosphere and character and kind of like energy about them. I think actually the harder characters to cast in any sort of movie or whatever would be Dom and Baird. Obviously, Baird is really hard to replace with Fred Tatasquire with Fred's voice performance. I saw apparently Cliff Belinsky said that he wanted Ryan Reynolds to play Baird, which, what in the fuck is that pick? To me, it's odd because Ryan Reynolds doesn't look anything like Baird, and from the movies he's been in, Ryan Reynolds doesn't act anything like Baird. He's kind of like an asshole, and he says quips, but that's about where it ends. And I think it's just an odd choice that doesn't translate as well, and I feel like that would make the character more of a Ryan Reynolds character than it is Baird, you know? I very much, and this might, you know, be a hot take for me, but I think Ryan Reynolds is kind of like Adam Sandler in the sense that he plays Ryan Reynolds characters, kind of like how Adam Sandler plays Adam Sandler characters. Ryan Reynolds is suited to characters that are him, and the character is basically just Ryan Reynolds in X movie, and I don't think Baird would be a good fit for that. And then for Dom Santiago, the depressed Latino himself, the most I've seen about people talking about Dom is just casting John Bernthal, who I haven't seen the Punisher series. The only thing I've really seen him in was The Walking Dead and Baby Driver, but obviously he seems like a pretty good pick for like the younger Dom that we see in Gears of War 1 and 2. I'm not totally against that. I think it's really hard to cast any of these characters because obviously characters in Gears of War are all 6 foot plus. They're just 280 pounds of pure muscle mass and like vigor. It's really hard to try and imagine anyone stepping into the armor. There are a few people, obviously people like Lester and Batista. I've talked to them about them a fair few times already now. They're just sort of built for it, obviously both being massive athletes and everything, but it's hard to like picture anyone else in those types of roles unless they really like scale down the armor in the kind of way that like JD and Dell's armor was in Gears of War 4. And this is the last point I'll try to make, but if they cast people for the animated series that is different from the actual original cast, I will be so goddamn fucking turned, bro. I can understand recasting some of the side characters like Sophia Hendrick, Elisa Valera are both voiced by Laura Bailey, who's also the voice for Kate. I could understand recasting some of the characters like that where they're just sort of reused voices and for the most part sound identical. Like you can tell they're all Laura Bailey. The one that's the hardest to tell is Alicia because she has more of a accent going on. But other than them and a few of the characters whose actors have, you know, obviously retired, like the voice actors for Mira and for Prescott have kind of moved on and they're going to have to be replaced at some point, obviously. I think the same thing has happened for Hoffman. But for everyone else, most everyone else, especially Marcus, Dom, Baird, and Cole, if you make a Gears of War animated series and you do not cast, you know, John DiMaggio as Marcus, what in the fuck are you doing?
There's no Home Depot out here, you fucking assholes. Fucking tomatoes. They fucked my tomatoes up! God damn it!
That is an honest question. If they do not cast John DiMaggio, who's already been on Netflix shows before, he's been on Disenchanted, the like Simpsons Dungeons and Dragons thing, right? He was on that show. And everyone else, obviously they're all kind of big voice actors. I think the only one that I don't know by name is Dom. His voice actor is a bit more of a sleuth, but otherwise, the rest of them are all great voice actors, and they've all been doing the characters for so long. I feel like if they try to cast anyone else as like under a different voice, it'll totally fall apart. I think to me, it's the same issue I had with, this has nothing to do with Gears of War at all, but it's the same issue. It's not a big issue, but it's an issue I had with the Lego Ninjago movie. If you don't know, you probably don't, but I was just young enough that I kind of grew up on like the first 1 or 2 seasons of Ninjago, like when it had kind of like started. And it had gotten to the point where, like, in my head, when I thought about my childhood, or I thought about Ninjago in general, I had the voices of the characters pinned down in my brain. Like, this is Kai, this is Jay, this is Zane, and funny enough, Cole. You know, it's a group of 4, same as Gears, but... And then they did the animated movie. I don't think... That one kind of came out of nowhere after they did the Lego movie and, like, Lego Batman, and then just Lego Ninjago. Which, you know, fair enough, but they like recast every single character from the TV show as just a famous person now in the movie, which kind of like, it felt odd to me. It feels like a spit in the face to the original voice actors that gave these characters life, and I feel like if they try to do the same thing with the Gears animated series, and there's not an actual reason for it, and they just like decide to do it anyways, that feels incredibly disrespectful to me. I think without like a proper reason, if you recast the original Gears of War actors, especially like Delta Squad and everything, like I've said, as someone else just because it's cheaper or whatever, or you're trying to get a more well-known name like attached to the project, that's just as disrespectful as the writers on The Witcher show who openly mocked the source material and everything like that to me. But hey, anyways, you know, it is what it is. When it comes out, I guess we'll see just how good it is. As far as I know, there's no like release date yet, so it could come later in 2023 or maybe in 2024. No idea. Hopefully we learn something about casting soon, or, you know, it could just be totally out of left field. Do you remember when they announced the Mario movie and they told us Chris Pratt was going to be Mario? That felt so fucking weird, and I feel like the Gears of War movie or show, whatever, is going to be the same thing, where they're going to be like, oh yeah, who do we get to play Marcus again? Christopher Judge? I mean, hey, you're a hell of an actor, but you know who Marcus Phoenix is, right? It's just, I feel like it's going to be such a weird time to see a series like this come to live action. I'm genuinely curious how they do it. But I guess we'll see. That's it from me. You know, comment if you have any thoughts about it. I want to hear more of what people think. Thumbs it up. Thumb my channel, this video all the way, you know. YouTube likes that. That's not me saying that. That's you know, YouTube encourages that. Other than that, you know, just subscribe, whatever. More links in the description on the channel itself. Other than that, you know, stay cool, have fun, just be awesome. Take care.